Before the chaos, before the pain, I was just a girl with a wrench and a dream. My name is Ashley, and I'm 30 years old. I live in Brookhaven, a city where the streets are always alive with noise, but sometimes your heart can feel completely silent. I work as a mechanic, and I've loved fixing cars since I was a little girl. My father used to let me sit beside him in the garage, handing him tools while he worked. That's where my passion was born, covered in grease, surrounded by engines, and full of dreams. Life was simple, and I was happy. I had a stable job in a small workshop downtown, and I was finally starting to feel like everything was falling into place. Then I met someone I thought was going to be part of my future. His name was Jason. He was kind, charming, and always said the right things. Within weeks, I was completely in love. It felt like the kind of love you read about in books, warm, exciting, and safe. But I had no idea what was waiting for me just around the corner. One crisp spring morning, I woke up feeling both nervous and excited. I had something important to tell Jason, something that would change both of our lives. I was pregnant, and not just with one baby, twins. I got ready and met him at our usual cafe downtown. As always, he greeted me with a warm smile and kissed me on the forehead. But my heart was racing. I sat across from him, my hands shaking slightly as I wrapped them around my cup of tea. "Jason," I said, trying to sound calm, "I have something to tell you." He leaned forward with curiosity. "I'm pregnant," I said, watching his eyes widen. "With twins." His smile faded. His face turned pale. For a few seconds, he said nothing at all. Then he stood up. "I need time to think," he mumbled, not even looking at me. "We'll talk later." Before I could respond, he turned and walked out of the cafe. I sat there, completely stunned. That night, I tried calling him again and again. No answer. I couldn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering why he'd reacted that way. What was going on? The next morning, I made a decision. I went to his house. I had to know the truth. But when the door opened, it wasn't Jason who stood there. It was a woman. She looked at me, confused. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm looking for Jason," I said softly. "I'm his girlfriend." Her expression turned cold. "I'm his fiancée," she replied, showing me a sparkling engagement ring. My world stopped. I don't even remember how I got home that day. Everything felt like a blur. The shock of learning that Jason had been lying to me all along, that he had a fiancée, was too much to process. I cried all night. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was terrified. I was pregnant with twins, and the man I loved had vanished from my life without a trace. I kept thinking, how am I going to raise 2 children alone? But then, something beautiful happened. My best friend, Mia, showed up the next morning without even being asked. She wrapped her arms around me and held me tight. "You are not alone," she said. "We're going to get through this together." Her words were exactly what I needed. Over the next few weeks, Mia became my lifeline. She cooked for me, stayed the night when I felt too low to be alone, and even helped me look for a better job. She knew the owner of a workshop across town and managed to get me an interview. At first, I didn't feel ready to face the world again. But then I looked in the mirror and touched my growing belly. I have to do this for them. The morning of the interview, I woke up early, pulled my hair back neatly, and wore the cleanest work shirt I had. My nerves were eating me alive, but I kept reminding myself I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing it for my babies. The workshop was located in a busier part of Brookhaven. It was bigger than the one I used to work at and felt more professional. When I walked in, I was greeted by a woman named Nora, the owner. She looked confident and no-nonsense, the kind of woman who had probably built this place with her own 2 hands. We sat in her office as she asked me about my experience. I told her the truth about my years working as a mechanic, about my skills, and yes, even about being pregnant. I thought she might turn me away, but instead, she nodded slowly. "You start tomorrow," she said. I blinked in disbelief. "Really?" She smiled slightly. "Let's see what you've got." Mia, who had waited outside for me, squealed when I told her. "You got the job." I knew it, but deep down, I knew the real challenge was just beginning. On my first day at the new workshop, I arrived early. My stomach fluttered with nerves, but I stood tall and walked in with confidence, or, at least, the best version of it I could manage. I introduced myself to the team. Most of them were polite, but curious. I could see the doubt in their eyes, especially when they noticed I was pregnant. They probably thought I wouldn't last long. I didn't let it bother me. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work, changing brake pads, diagnosing engine problems, checking suspensions. It felt good to get my hands greasy again. With each job I completed, I noticed the glances from my coworkers slowly changing, from curiosity to quiet respect. Nora, my boss, was strict but fair. She didn't go easy on me just because I was pregnant. She expected quality, and I gave it my all. And honestly, I liked that about her. She reminded me that I was still strong. I was still capable. Even on the hardest days when my feet ached and my back throbbed, I kept going. Every bolt I tightened and every engine I fixed made me feel like I was rebuilding my life one piece at a time. I was more than just a mechanic now. I was a soon-to-be mom, a fighter, a woman on her own path. One evening, after a long shift at the workshop, I was driving home through a quieter part of Brookhaven. The sky was already dark, and the road ahead was nearly empty. That's when I saw him. A man was lying on the side of the road, his clothes torn, his body bruised, and blood trickling from his forehead. I slammed on the brakes and pulled over, heart racing. I jumped out and rushed to him. "Hey, can you hear me?" I asked, kneeling beside him. He barely opened his eyes. His lips moved, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. I knew I couldn't leave him there. With effort, I managed to help him into the passenger seat of my car. I didn't even think twice. I just drove straight to Brookhaven General Hospital. When we arrived, I ran inside yelling for help. Nurses came rushing out with a stretcher and wheeled him inside. I waited in the hospital lobby, shaken and breathless, my hands still trembling. I had no idea who he was, but something about the way he had looked at me, helpless, desperate, made it impossible to walk away. A nurse came out about an hour later.
"He's stable," she said.
"We've got him under observation." I breathed out in relief, but I didn't realize that helping this stranger would open the door to something much bigger than I ever expected. The next morning, I was late for work because of everything that happened at the hospital. When I walked into the workshop, Nora was waiting for me with crossed arms and a stern look. "Ashley, we can't afford delays," she said sharply. "I know, and I'm really sorry," I replied, trying to explain. "I found a man injured on the road last night. I took him to the hospital. He was in terrible shape." Nora's face softened for a brief second, but her voice stayed firm. "I appreciate that you helped someone, but we have rules here. I'm docking your pay for yesterday." It stung. I left work that day feeling like I had done the right thing but was being punished for it. That evening, I sat on my couch, sipping water and trying to calm my racing thoughts. Then a knock at the door. I opened it and found an older man in a suit, with a worried yet kind expression on his face. "Are you Ashley?" he asked. "Yes." "I'm Matthew," he said. "The man you helped, he's my son. His name is Adrian." I nodded slowly, surprised. "I came to thank you," he said, handing me a sealed envelope. "Please accept this, just as a token of our gratitude." I hesitated but took the envelope politely. Then Matthew's face turned serious. "There's something else. Adrian wasn't just injured. He was kidnapped. Someone drugged him and dumped him on the road. We believe it was done to steal from him." I stood there frozen. Kidnapped? The man I saved was the victim of something much darker than I had imagined. I couldn't sleep that night. My thoughts kept circling back to Adrian, the man I had found on the road. I kept wondering who would do something like that to him.
And why?
The next day, I went to the hospital to check on him. At the front desk, I met a kind-looking nurse named Jenna. When I told her I had brought Adrian in the night before, she gave me a curious glance and nodded. "He's still unconscious," she said softly. "But there's something strange going on." She led me to his room. Adrian was lying in bed, hooked up to several machines, breathing steadily, but still not awake. "What do you mean strange?" I asked. Jenna looked around and lowered her voice. "The sedatives in his system are too strong for the kind of injuries he had. Someone was keeping him unconscious on purpose." A chill ran down my spine. "That matches what his father told me," I whispered. "He thinks Adrian was kidnapped. And now this." Jenna's jaw tightened. "Then we need to get him out of here." My eyes widened. "Out of the hospital?" "If someone in here is keeping him drugged," she said, "then yes." I hesitated. It felt risky, even crazy. But deep down, I knew she was right. Adrian wasn't safe here. That night, Jenna and I returned to the hospital. She used her access to turn off the monitors and unhook Adrian's carefully. Together, we wheeled him out using a service elevator and brought him to my car. My heart pounded the entire way home. I had never done anything like this before. Once we got to my apartment, I helped Jenna settle Adrian into the guest room. She said the sedatives would wear off slowly. All I could do now was wait and hope he would wake up. The next morning, I sat quietly beside Adrian's bed, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. I hadn't slept much. My mind kept replaying everything: his kidnapping, the hospital, Jenna's warning. Every part of it felt surreal. Then I saw his fingers twitch. "Adrian," I said softly, leaning forward. His eyes fluttered open slowly, unfocused at first. His voice came out rough, almost like a whisper. "Where am I?" "You're safe," I said gently. "I'm Ashley. I found you on the road and brought you to the hospital. But something strange was happening there, so we brought you here." He blinked a few times, trying to take it all in. "You were kidnapped," I continued. "Your father told me. Someone was keeping you unconscious on purpose." Adrian's jaw tightened as he looked down, his voice still weak. "It was
Ivan.
my legal guardian. He wants my inheritance. He had people drug me, hide me." I couldn't believe it. "Your guardian?" He nodded slowly. "He's been trying to control everything ever since my parents passed. But when I turned 28, I became eligible to take full ownership of their estate. That's when things got worse." My heart ached for him. To be betrayed by someone trusted, especially family, was a kind of pain I understood too well. "You're not alone anymore," I said firmly. "We're going to stop him." Adrian gave me a faint smile. "Thank you." And in that quiet moment, something shifted. This wasn't just about helping a stranger anymore. It was about fighting for what was right, and standing beside someone who, like me, had been left alone in the dark. Over the next few days, Adrian slowly began to recover. I helped him sit up, eat, and regain his strength. Nurse Jenna visited secretly to check on him, bringing vitamins and lighter medications to flush out the heavy sedatives that had been in his system. Meanwhile, Adrian opened up to me. He told me how Ivan had slowly isolated him over the years, limiting his access to money, controlling who he saw, and making him feel dependent. When Adrian finally pushed back and requested full control over his inheritance, Ivan snapped. He had him drugged, hidden away, and left unconscious to keep him quiet and out of the way. I was horrified, but we didn't waste time. Jenna began digging into hospital records. One afternoon, she arrived with a folder in her hands, her eyes blazing with determination.
"I found it," she said.
Medical logs show that someone requested extremely high doses of sedatives under Adrian's name, without proper cause. Adrian took the folder and read through it silently. His hands trembled slightly, but his face grew more focused by the second. "This is enough to start an investigation," he said. Together, we visited his father, Matthew, and explained everything. He was furious and promised to use his influence to make sure the police would take the case seriously. Every step of the way, Adrian and I grew closer. We talked late into the night, not just about Ivan or the case, but about life, fears, and everything we'd both lost. There was something honest about him, something gentle beneath all the hurt. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe again. With the medical evidence in hand and the support of Adrian's father, we went to the Brookhaven Police Department. I sat beside Adrian as he gave his statement, handing over the folder Jenna had found. The detective listened carefully, flipping through each page with growing concern. "This is serious," he said. "We'll open an investigation immediately." The days that followed were tense. We tried to live normally. Adrian continued healing, and I kept going to work, but every phone call, every knock at the door made our hearts skip. Then one morning we got the call we'd been waiting for. "They're arresting Ivan today," Adrian said, his voice shaking slightly. "They have enough evidence." I looked at him, proud. "You did it. You stood up to him." "No," he said, looking at me softly. "We did." Later that week, we were asked to testify in court. I had never been in a courtroom before. The tension, the silence, it was overwhelming. But when I saw Ivan sitting across the room in a suit, looking calm and smug, something in me hardened. He didn't look like a monster. But I knew what he'd done. I stood and gave my statement clearly and with full honesty, how I found Adrian, what the nurses said, and how we rescued him from the hospital. Jenna testified, too. So did Adrian's father. Then it was Adrian's turn. And when he spoke, there was strength in every word. He described how Ivan had manipulated and drugged him, how he'd been robbed of his freedom, and how he almost lost everything until he was saved. The judge listened carefully. And finally, after everyone had spoken, the verdict came. Ivan was found guilty of kidnapping, attempted fraud, and unlawful drug administration. He was sentenced to several years in prison and stripped of all legal rights over Adrian's estate. The courtroom felt like it exhaled. Adrian squeezed my hand as we walked out together. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked free. After the trial, everything felt lighter, like a cloud had finally lifted. Adrian moved into a cozy apartment just a few blocks from mine. He was free, safe, and finally in control of his life again. And we were closer than ever. One sunny afternoon, we were walking in the park, my baby bump now very visible. Adrian gently placed his hand on my stomach and smiled. "You've been through so much, Ashley," he said, "but you never gave up." I smiled back. "Neither did you." He paused for a second and then reached into his coat pocket. "I know life has been unpredictable, but one thing I'm sure about is how I feel about you." He dropped down on one knee. My heart skipped a beat. "Ashley," he said, his voice soft but sure, "will you marry me?" Tears welled up in my eyes. I didn't even have to think. "Yes," I whispered, nodding. "Yes." He slipped a delicate silver ring on my finger. We hugged tightly, surrounded by trees, sunlight, and something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. Over the next few weeks, we began planning for both the wedding and the twins. Adrian threw himself into preparing the nursery, reading baby books, and going with me to every checkup. He was already acting like a father, loving, present, and proud. At the same time, I reconnected with Nora, and with Adrian's help, we decided to open a new kind of workshop, one just for women. A safe space where women could not only get their cars fixed, but also learn the basics themselves. A place that felt empowering. The idea took off. We launched the pilot branch right in Brookhaven, and soon, women from all over the city were signing up. It wasn't just a workshop, it was a movement. I had never felt stronger, never felt more myself. Winter had arrived, and so had the most beautiful day of my life, the day I gave birth to my twins. Adrian was right beside me in the delivery room, holding my hand and whispering, "You've got this," over and over. When I finally heard the cries of my two newborns, a boy and a girl, I felt my heart burst. We named them Luca and Mira. Those first few weeks at home were filled with sleepless nights, diaper changes, and bottles, but also laughter, love, and moments of quiet joy. Adrian took on fatherhood like he was born for it. He never once complained. He held them, fed them, and soothed them like a natural. I thought the past was behind me, until one afternoon at the workshop, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Ashley." I froze. I hadn't heard that voice in almost a year. I turned slowly and saw him, Jason, the biological father of my children. He looked thinner, older, worn down. But still, that same confident tone lingered in his voice. "I heard about the twins," he said. "I want to be part of their lives." I stood up straight, calm and collected. Perfect timing, I said, walking to the counter and pulling out a sealed envelope. Jason frowned. What's this? I handed it to him. A lawsuit for parental abandonment and emotional distress. His mouth fell open. You left when I needed you the most, I continued. You don't get to walk back into our lives like nothing happened. Actions have consequences, Jason. Adrian stepped beside me, firm but calm. I'm their father now. I've been here since the beginning. Jason looked from me to Adrian to the employees who had stopped what they were doing, watching in silence. You can't be serious, Jason muttered, his voice breaking. Oh, I'm very serious, I said. You'll be hearing from our lawyer soon. Jason's face flushed with embarrassment. He turned and stormed out of the workshop, humiliated, defeated, and finally held accountable for everything he had done. For the first time since he left me pregnant and alone, I felt powerful. After Jason's dramatic exit, something shifted inside me. I no longer carried the weight of his betrayal. He was finally gone, not just physically, but from my heart, my mind, and my future. Adrian and I focused on what truly mattered. Our family. Luca and Mira were growing fast. Their giggles filled the house, and every tiny milestone felt like a victory. Their first smiles, the way they held our fingers, the way they looked at Adrian like he was their whole world, it made every struggle worth it. We officially got married in a small ceremony in the garden behind Adrian's father's house. Just close friends, Nora, Mia, and a handful of people who had stood by us through everything. I wore a simple white dress. Adrian cried when he saw me. I never thought I'd get a second chance at life, he whispered during our vows. You're not the only one, I said, smiling through tears. Our women's workshop in Brookhaven was thriving. We expanded to include weekend training classes, and soon we were mentoring younger girls who had never held a wrench before. Watching them grow in confidence reminded me why I started this journey in the first place. I had gone from being abandoned and alone to being loved, respected, and unbreakable. One night, after putting the twins to sleep, Adrian and I sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the quiet sounds of our peaceful neighborhood. He looked at me and said, You know, Ashley, you saved my life. I rested my head on his shoulder and whispered, You saved mine too. And it was true. From the ashes of betrayal and fear, we built a home full of love, truth, and second chances. No matter what came next, I knew this much. We had already survived the worst together. And now we were living the best. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched your heart or made you think, don't forget to like the video. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you felt. And if you want to hear more powerful stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything. See you in the next one.